Hmm.
right? Just
Yeah, I
like,
like that.
yeah. So just like in My Life with Master, while the eventual, murder of the master is a very much, it's actually not mechanically mandated. Somebody has to choose to do it, but emotionally it's pretty likely. And also, the point is that we know there will be a reckoning and
Yeah.
consequences on everybody. That's going to happen. So that's more of a framing device. People who try to play My Life with Master as a strategic device. How can we, get the points to knock this guy off? And can we do it as if the game were proposing you that you can't? So,
Hmm.
how can you? I say you can't. Do you have the strategic acumen to make that happen? If you do
Hmm.
that, the game will seem very. I've seen people try to do that and they're just puzzled. They're like, wait a minute, that wasn't very fun. And I was like, that's because you weren't, you know,
Hmm.
I don't know what game you were playing, but it wasn't this one.
Right.
Um, yeah, My Life with Master is a very cruel game for people who like to play role playing games to win, because it basically says, yeah, okay. And then you're like, wait,
Right.
you know, I don't get it. Um,
Right.
so, anyway, does that help a little bit, in terms of just thinking about the
Yeah.
dynamics among these things? I mean, the one that
Yeah.
goes the furthest with this is the Mountain Witch, in which, frankly, the fight with the big bad is no harder than any other conflict.
Mhm.
And it's just all about where the different Ronin have got to in terms of their relationships with themselves and with each other, in having been through this together, right? Who's lived,
Right.
who's died, who's remembered and honored, and who is better left forgotten. Who killed another one of us on the basis of a misunderstanding. All that stuff. That's
Right.
really what you're finding out. So I don't know. I mean, does those sort of kind of sharpen your mind about that?
Yeah, that actually gives me a lot to think about.
In that
I'm
context, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say I think I understand what you're talking about in needing to draw, not attention, but to draw some of the focus away from the culmination, the final battle, or winning. And I this gives me a lot to think about in that regard. But I do think that I don't want it to be totally um,
You
like
want them to be
fun
able you want them to be able to fail that, right? So kind of
yeah,
unlike
and I
My
want them
Life
to
with
care
Master
about
and
winning.
unlike the Mountain Witch, there is a
Yeah,
failure state, right?
yeah.
Um,
And I want I really, for some reason or another, I've always cared about the notion of responsibility in this game, of like, if you win, you won, and if
right.
you lost, whatever bad things happened, they were your fault. Whatever good
Yeah,
things
well,
happened, they
I
were your
could see that. I mean, what if you ended up just doing madness? I mean, it might not work, first of all, and you'll do a hell of a lot of
fault.
damage even if you don't get the victory points. So there you
Yeah,
did, so maybe you kept it up a lot, but your chance of actually getting, the victory are still dodgy by doing that.
yeah,
And same thing with mischief, right? You did a lot of mischief, but it sometimes it worked out, sometimes it didn't. Um, it's kind of an interesting thought too, that if you if you are going to have like this other kind of mechanic as sort of a means of expanding behavior, one thing I was thinking of, the reason I phrased it the way I did, was not that, well, it's not like My Life with Master where you're just building love by having a better and better relationship.
mhm,
That's one thing to do, right? Just it's one thing. You can have more of it, but it is one thing to do. I was
yeah,
thinking more in terms of the character's range of activity being expanded.
yeah, and I like that a lot.
Yeah. So you have much more of a wide open set of, how do we deal with this, or how do we frame situations for ourselves through our own proactive behaviors. Um,
Yeah,
you basically become a freer person, by developing that way. Um, so So those are some possibilities. It may be that having that third way, if you will, be like relationshipy. Again, that
Mm-hmm.
might be, we might be done with that, right? I mean, we might, it may not be relationship based. I
Yeah.
just talked about that because I was using the analogy of my life with Master.
Yeah.
It could be something else. But the important thing is that it be based on actual role playing, and it be based on some kind of resolution that is as concrete as I roll to hit him.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's one of the nice things about the phrase "I roll to hit him" is that it makes absolutely no distinction between mechanic and imagination.
Mm-hmm.
The phrase
Right.
itself. You've literally said both the imagination and the mechanic in the same breath, as if
Right.
they were entirely a single thing. And
Mm-hmm.
so, with that in mind, I mean, it would be nice to have an action in this game which had the same sort of conceptual weight, where saying the action is the same thing as role playing, and it's the same thing as rolling for it, if that's what you're doing. Um,
Right.
so then I wanted to drill down further in terms of the scale of operations. My Life with Master is notable for being incredibly coarse grained. Not only is there a single role per scene, basically per
Yeah.
situation, but it is made fairly early. You describe what you do in a pretty initiatory way, right? You
Mm-hmm.
don't really even role play much, some, but not too much before you roll. And it's a single roll, and you play out the results. Paul has played with this a lot. It's the case in um, Bacchanal, sorry, and it's also the case in, to a lesser extent, in The Clay That Woke. He likes that. He likes that randomization a little early in the
Mm-hmm.
in the speaking process.
Right.
Um, so I'm not saying that you necessarily have to do that, and I'm also saying that the business of a single roll for the whole range that basically sets up the framework for all sorts of role playing after it. Well, why not just as a hypothetical get closer to the bone, closer in, more fine grained in scale, right?
Yeah.
More, I mean, the game that I like to quote as being one of the most fine grained in scale that I know is in fact Sorcerer. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you really can have the rolls be extremely small scale in terms of fiction, and you can have quite a lot of them.
Yeah.
Um, and so, with that in mind, I mean, when we go, let's say we say, all right, man, I'm going into madness. The guy next to me says, well, I do too. We're going to go, we're going
Yeah.
to go after these guys who are taking these toxic chemicals into their dumping site in the forest, and we're going to, we're going to take them down. We're going to make sure that stuff doesn't get to the dumping site, and we're unleashing the madness, right? We come screaming out of the trees, or appear in their dreams, or whatever god awful thing that we do when we do this. And
Right.
so, okay, play this. I mean, do we say, what do you do, and discover the action and find out how the action went?
Mm-hmm.
Or do we just do one big roll and then just talk? Right.
Yeah. So the way I'm thinking about it right now is I think I want it fairly fine grained
Right.
because I like I said I want the culmination, the win or lose state, and what happens to the players in the process to be very much the responsibility of the players.
Right.
And so I feel like if it's too broad, you roll once, you're kind of at the hand of fate. You don't have much
Right.
capacity to
Right.
express yourself tactically. You're not really going to feel responsible for what happens at the end.
Right. Right. You need to be able to, in this case, you need to have a little bit of back and forth. And am I still in it? Right. Am
Yeah.
I still in it? Am I going to change up what I'm doing? Am I going to, you know, give up, or am I going to take my victory as far as it got, and that's good enough, or anything like that? Um,
And be like, and think back, oh, we lost that conflict. Maybe we would have won that conflict if I'd done things differently,
right.
and feeling the weight of whether or not that was the right thing to do.
I completely get that. And I think it makes a lot of sense. Now, looking at systems in which that works instead of just being a boring grinds down of some resource,
Yeah,
right?
I don't want that.
Right.
Yeah.
Those are not, that's not necessarily as easy to do. Different, many have tried.
Yeah.
So at the moment, again, as a thought exercise, what's a game that you've played that actually was pretty exciting in terms of launching into the action and knowing that that kind of consequential, you know, reflection is possible?
I played some. I don't remember the name of it. There was a game my friend ran that had a very sort of visceral combat where it was possible to die fairly easily, and you couldn't rely on if you're feeling safe at a certain hit point level.
Right.
Um, I never actually gotten to play it, but what I read of Circle of Hands seemed like it would have some
It
of that.
has, oh yeah, that has its
Yeah,
place there.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that the
As far
first
as
thing that, yeah,
self-expression, some of the D&Ds, as far as self-expression in tactical combat, some of the D&Ds have done that for me, but they are also kind of pretty damn grindy.
yeah, I agree. I actually was a lot happier playing our version of fourth edition. Well, I say our version. We didn't change any rules, but you know that I changed up the framing devices. But
Yeah,
the cool thing about that was the what I had chosen for the available races and classes actually kept armor class from being all that great.
mm,
So therefore, being hit, I mean, it was a lot more common,
right.
and I found that was a lot more fun. I mean, characters, dropped in hit points as a matter of course, not you did the sort of soak effect of your armor class. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you hit me, but whatever damage is irrelevant because, or rather, you struck at me, but that's fine. Um,
Yeah.
Once characters were running at three quarters and half hit points, then all of a sudden the combat tactics were just far more interesting. So in this game, is physical personal risk the the metric? And the answer may
Yeah.
be yes, but is it?
Yeah, I've been kind of going back and forth on that because I don't think so. If what is at risk is whether or not your home is destroyed and everything you love is destroyed, and or alternately whether or not you are completely lost to hatred, it doesn't feel as interesting to me. Like the whether or not one risks one life seems obvious. Like obviously you're going to
Those are
risk
big
your life.
scale. That's the thing, though. All that's occurring at a much bigger scale, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Even the darkness one is very incremental.
yeah,
So, what about at the small scale? The small scale that's actually literally embedded in the actions that I'm taking, right? Where
yeah.
the consequence, the risks of what I'm doing are integrated into the action that I'm taking.
So where I've landed so far is that I think I do want personal risk to matter, but I don't think I'm not sure I'm particularly interested in character death or
Right.
in involuntary character death.
Right. And so, yeah, that's actually a fairly interesting point now. Um, and it matters because when we talk about the nitty gritty of mechanics, one of the things that I'm always looking at are outcomes and what goes up and what goes down.
Mm-hmm.
So, if and we want it to be direct. We're not talking about well then through coincidence then one of your family members dies.
Yeah,
Some damn
yeah,
thing. We're talking about direct stuff. So let's take a look. Now I'm not sold on this mischief, madness, you know, mischief, madness, or hugs, right? Getting hugs with
yeah.
somebody. I'm not sold
Right.
on that being, the framework of it all, but keeping it as a model. in that case, when you go into the madness, what are you putting at risk? Well, there is the accumulation of the darkness points. But again, I want that to be kind of end of session, kind of end of episode
Yeah.
assessment.
Yeah.
Right here and right now, what are you putting at risk? And you
Yeah.
could actually be putting your allies at risk. You're dangerous.
Mm.
You can go after, them, but maybe you can be maybe the way that you take damage is not from, that being hit, but by, your friends being too crazy. Maybe that's a way to take damage.
Yeah.
Um, so,
Another thing
or,
I was thinking about. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
but, or any number of other things I'm trying to say, well, what tactic do I do? Am I attacking directly? Am I attacking sneakily? Um, it's kind of a good question. I mean, how consequential do we want this to be? Do we want it to be an incremental thing? Or is it possible to get trapped forever in someone's dream?
Mm.
And now you're like a dream creature, for a while,
Right.
or for the next episode, or until you can break free or something.
Right.
I mean, if you enter their dreams to attack them, is there a possible consequence of this that you can't get out? And now you have to like exist in dreams and play from the dreams. It's
Right.
kind of freaky.
Mm.
But the point is that I'm just saying whatever the consequences are, they should match the nature of the kind of approach you're taking, which I'm
Mm.
pretending is madness at the moment, and
Yeah.
also specific to the action that you're doing. And how do you know what actions that you're doing? Well, that's on your sheet. My madness is this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because that's the kind of critter I am. That's my thing. When I go
Yeah. That kind of
mad,
fits.
I go and I make your dreams go crazy, right? Or another guy's,
Mm.
well, when I go mad, I rip your head off and eat it.
Right.
And so the point is that if you have actions and then you have mechanical consequences and fictional consequences for them that are very directly related to those actions, that's kind of the level of grain that we're talking about. And again, maybe it is. I mean, you'll notice that I'm relying on color over and over again, right? I'm relying
Yeah.
on the imagery and the thematic stuff in action for just that reason. Because the more I think about it, imagine it, and say, well, yeah, what if that happens? The more mechanics start to occur to me. This is where we
Yeah.
think about whether the mechanics of cards, where you know, we've had this many draws and we haven't had an ace yet. The
Right.
chance of an ace is higher now. Or so and so just refilled his hand, so the chance that the good combo is there is real, but I don't know. That kind of
Right.
stuff. Those are features of cards as mechanical objects. The situation with dice, which is basically of probabilities going up and down. I mean, among other things, but take the basics. It's probabilities going up and down. Which of those seem like the most the most interesting